another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we're going to do a very special episode. This is going to be some type of Clemson preview. Again, we're a little bit far out from the college football season, but we want to start getting around to all these big name teams for you guys, giving our opinions. Now, Clemson is probably, you could argue, the most talked about team in the college football season. I mean, this team is going to be the best Clemson team since Clemson has Trevor Lawrence. Yes, I said it. Since that Trevor Lawrence Clemson team, the two times they won a national championship, lost in the national championship, this is going to be the most talented team since then. And a large part of this is because of they're able to return the most players in college football, tied with Illinois. They were able to return the most starters. Not only that, Dabo Swinney, who we've been ragging on for 2 years, finally adapted. He decided to use the transfer portal, use NIL, and this Clemson program, these Clemson boosters, really have a lot to pat themselves on the back for giving these players these opportunities because, like I said, 16 starters. We have 4 guys that we believe that could be first-round NFL draft picks into next year. Being able to keep this core, this is going to make the ceiling for Clemson really high. Cade, in my opinion, along with Dabo Swinney, have a ton to prove this season. When we look at Cade Klubnik, his final year before going into the NFL, he has so much to prove. Along with Dabo Swinney, like we said, hasn't really gotten much done after the Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson era. We know DJ Ungale, he did not pan out. A huge prospect coming out of high school. Cade Klubnik, his career has been super rocky. When we look at Cade Klubnik, when he was going into last year, people had major questions about him. I mean, his first season coming in for DJ Ungale, 697 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Then the year after that, you have 2,844 yards, 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Pretty pedestrian. But this year, he absolutely exploded. 3,639 yards, 36 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions, 12th best QBR in the country. Him and Dabo, I think, have a lot to prove, and they really stacked all their chips into this college football season, and we're going to talk about it. Like I said, Cade Klubnik, there was major concerns coming to last year for him if he was really that guy in college football. He answered the bell, but I want to go over last year in college football for this Clemson team and why there were some major concerns because Cade Klubnik came in, like I said, to a rough scenario with Georgia opening up, and this Clemson team completely did not show up. You're talking about a loss 34-3. Cade Klubnik and this offense could get absolutely nothing going. And I think the biggest part for Clemson last year, why they weren't as competitive maybe as they should be against these higher-end teams, was their offensive line. I thought he did not get enough time in the pocket in this Georgia game, and this Georgia defensive front was absolutely dominating them. And like I said, for a guy that was coming off major questions last year, to open up like this, people had Clemson already out of contention in week 1. As you should. I mean, you're going up against a top 5 team in Georgia. You're expected to be a top 10 team, and you could not even compete. This was as rough as they could open up. Now, they win a huge stretch of games. You're talking about Appalachian State, NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, Virginia. All pretty easy wins. Again, after the tough first matchup against Georgia, as tough as you could get, they had a pretty easy ride out going into that. They played Louisville, which they lost. Again, they lost to Tyler Shuck, a guy that was a top NFL quarterback prospect last year. They lose 33-21. Probably a game you could have argued they should have won. They were a better team than Louisville last year. Then they string off some wins. Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, DeSitel, all pretty dominant wins there. They face South Carolina and they lose 17-14. This game was an absolute insane game. Not only that, Cade Klubnik had a huge clutch run in that game as well. They lose. So they have 3 losses, but they still somehow find their way in the ACC championship, mainly because Miami had a pretty tough end into the season. And they come back and they beat SMU 34-31. That game was absolute cinema. That was probably their biggest game of the season and their biggest win of the season for sure. Then they play Texas in the first round of the college football playoffs. They lose 38-24 again. I don't think this offensive line gave Cade Klubnik enough time at all. That results to a loss for them as well. Now, going into last season, you look at the three biggest teams they played, arguably Georgia, South Carolina, Texas. Obviously, throw SMU there as well. They had 3 out of 4 of those games they lost. This is why I have major concerns for Clemson, and I'm not as high on them as other people. I mean, the first reason is too as well. I don't think Cade Klubnik is the best quarterback in the country. A lot of people do. I'm not that high on him. Again, do I think he's a top 5 quarterback in the country? No doubt. But I don't have him at number 1. Not only that, like I said, they were unable to compete last year against a lot of the big teams in the country. And I get it. You have the most returning players, but how your season ended last year and how, again, the game against Georgia went, I'm a little concerned. I get it. You have first-round talent coming back. You have NFL talent coming back as well. But you had the same talent last year, and it didn't go as well as I thought it should have. Now, let's get into their roster as a whole and why I think this team still could have college football championship aspirations. Again, do I think they're a top 3 team in the country? No. Do I think Cade Klubnik is the best quarterback in the country? Again, no. But this team still, with the returning talent they have, I think they could have aspirations to win a college football championship if everything goes right. Let's get into it. So when you look at this Clemson roster, the biggest thing for the Clemson roster, in my opinion, like I said, the returning talent. When you talk about Peter Woods, TJ Parker, Avion Terrell, and Cade Klubnik, those are possibly 4 first-round guys. Their defense is absolutely loaded with cornerstones. TJ Parker could possibly be the best edge rusher in college football next year in a huge spot, again, on the edge. When you look at Peter Woods in the middle, going to be absolutely dominant. And Avion Terrell, very similar to his brother AJ Terrell, is a leader in the secondary. He could play cornerback, safety hybrid. I expect him to play way more corner, though, this season. And their defense is just stacked with cornerstones. Not only that, they bring in Will Help from the transfer portal, who I think is going to be their biggest impact for transfers. You bring in Jeremiah Alexander, which I think is a great depth piece from Alabama. Alabama wasn't able to get the most out of him, but what he has in his physical attributes as a 4-star, but not only that, the ability to play edge and linebacker gives this defense a ton of depth. And to top it all off, they had Tom Allen, defensive coordinator out of Penn State. Again, Penn State's defense was absolutely ridiculous. The talent that he was able to put in the NFL, this is going to be a huge upgrade. It's going to bring this defense together, and I think could absolutely transform it. Now going into the offense, the biggest thing for this offense was they were able to bring back all 3 receivers. When you talk about TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, Antonio Williams, I think Antonio Williams is one of the biggest X factors on this team. He's the one with the big playability, had over 900 yards last season, and he's the one that really stretches the field and opens up a lot of things for this Clemson offense. And TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, very solid receivers as well. And all 3 receivers, I think, really complement each other. Now, they also had Tristan Smith from Southeast Missouri. Very funny thing about Tristan Smith, I was actually talking to one of his teammates the other day, and he was talking to me about Tristan Smith and how he's going to transfer into Clemson and how his skill set is really going to help this Clemson team. I think Tristan Smith really just brings a lot more depth and to this receiving room. When you look at the offensive line, I said it, I think the offensive line should be a lot more experienced, and they're going to have to be to protect Cade Klubnik. The biggest thing and the biggest X factor for this Clemson offense is Gideon Davidson. Gideon Davidson is going to have to take a huge role from Phil Maffa. Phil Maffa, a guy that's going into the NFL. Phil Maffa was on this Clemson team for a while and was a really good back. And now Clemson's really going to have to rely on Gideon Davidson, a freshman, to take hold of this offense. He's going to be the biggest X factor. Clemson has huge expectations for Gideon Davidson. Again, they would have put more into the transfer portal to make somebody their starter if they didn't. But true freshman as a starter, 4-star, Gideon Davidson is really going to be the X factor for this offense. This offense is going to need a run game. Obviously, we talk about how talented their receiving corps is. Could be the most talented receiving corps in the country, but they're going to need a run game as well. to beat teams in a variety of different ways as they have championship aspirations. Now, like I said, this is a huge year for Cade Klubnik along with Dabo Swinney. Cade Klubnik, going into the NFL, has the most experience and most talent that he ever had on this Clemson roster, the most returning talent. He's going to have to take this Clemson offense to a whole nother level. I do think it's possible, along with Dabo Swinney, a guy that has multiple championships in college football. This is a huge year for him to get back in the mix. Dabo Swinney obviously did it with Deshaun Watson, did it with Trevor Lawrence, had a rough patch with DJ Ungulai, and really developing Cade Klubnik. Like we said, Cade Klubnik wasn't always this guy that came in as an absolute stud in college football. Dabo Swinney's going to have to prove that he could do it again. And I already like the way he's heading with using the transfer portal and adapting as well. We're going to go over now the 2025 schedule for Clemson and why I believe people are this high on Clemson. Now, the reason why I believe people are this high on Clemson is because their floor is so high. When you look at their schedule, being in the ACC, they have one of the easiest schedules for an elite team in college football. But very similar to last year, they're going to open up with arguably their hardest game in the schedule as the first game. And I think this could be the biggest game of the season for Clemson. I think you really have to open this game up with a win and show the college football world, show all these people why they were right. Again, Cade Klubnik has no time to ease into the college football season. We talk about it, how impactful the first 3 weeks would be for a college football quarterback. If you open up and you could get in rhythm, it is a huge advantage. But Cade Klubnik facing another, what could possibly be an elite team in college football in LSU week 1, who's in a very similar spot to Clemson as well. We talked about, if you guys want to go back to how loaded the week 1 schedule is, we talked about this game in depth. But LSU, another team very similar to Clemson, a lot of returning talent. Not only that, a possible first-round NFL quarterback on their roster as well. This is going to be a high-flying game. I expect a lot of points in this game. But, again, it's going to be very interesting to see which one of these teams could make the first mark in college football and really get on a run after this game. Then after that, you got teams like Troy, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, North Carolina, Boston College. So you got 5 games after that. Even if this LSU game doesn't work out, you could get this offense and this defense in rhythm. But again, very different from other teams. This Clemson team has so much returning talent. They should already have a lot of chemistry between them. Then they play SMU, which is going to be another tough game for them. It was a tough game last year. They came out on top. It was the biggest game of the year for Clemson. I don't expect SMU to be as good as they were last year, but it's still one of the toughest games on their schedule. Then you go again, Duke, Florida State, Louisville, Furman. I expect Duke to be a little better. Got to expect Florida State to be a little better. But again, all games that Clemson is going to be pretty heavy. Then they ended with South Carolina. So very similar to last year, the beginning and the end of this Clemson schedule is going to be very tough. And if they could really get 2 wins there, I think that's how you're going to get into a championship-type run for this Clemson team. Because, again, it's very big in college football how you're able to start the season and how you're able to end the season. And this is arguably their 2 hardest games in the schedule, the beginning and the end of this college football season. So, summing this video up, I do believe Clemson is between a top 5 and top 10 team in the country. I do think definitely with their returning talent, this NFL talent, that this team could win a college football championship. They aren't my favorites, and Cade Klubnik isn't the best quarterback in the country to me. But I do think this Clemson team is going to be elite, and he's going to have a huge year. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, this Clemson-type preview. And Sloppy Saturdays is